Good afternoon. Today we are going to read through chapters 3 and 4 of The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. And we're not just going to be reading the words, we're going to be stopping and talking about interesting vocabulary words as we go. So if you're learning English, this is a great way to improve your vocabulary. And we're doing it live. So if you're watching this with me right now live, then I encourage you to ask questions as you encounter words or phrases that you don't understand. Now, this seems like a pretty simple book, actually, so the vocabulary isn't very difficult. Not like some of the other books we've been doing, where the vocabulary is very difficult. So this is, I think, closer to an intermediate level of English rather than advanced. All right, well, let's get started with Chapter 3 of The Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy was left alone, she began to feel hungry. So she went to the cupboard and cut herself some bread, which she spread with butter. She gave some to Toto, and taking a pail from the shelf, a pail is a bucket. In case you don't know what a bucket is, let's take a look at that word. There. So most of the time people will say bucket. This is a bucket, but you can call it a pail also. That's fine. It's not unusual, but I think bucket, at least in North America, is more common. And taking a pail from the shelf, she carried it down to the little brook and filled it with clear, sparkling water. Toto ran over the trees and began to bark at the birds. You know, barking is what dogs do. Ruff, ruff, ruff. Barking. And began to bark at the birds sitting there. Dorothy went to get him and saw such delicious fruit hanging from the branches that she gathered some of it, finding it was just what she wanted to help out her breakfast. Then she went back to the house, and having helped herself and Toto to a good drink of cool water. You know, when you help yourself to something, if you look at those words, you would probably think that has something to do with the word help. Help! But really, when you help yourself to something, it means you don't ask permission. You just take something. Dorothy is now in this strange land, and she doesn't really know how things work there, and yet she's going and taking food from the trees and taking water from the river, and she's helping herself. She's taking things without permission. If you have a guest in your home and you want to tell them, don't ask me for anything, just take what you want, go into the refrigerator or go into the cabinets, take whatever food you want. Or maybe if you have a guest over at dinner, and you want to tell them, don't ask to be served, just pretend like this is your home and take what you want from the table. What you say is, help yourself. That's a very common expression. That means just take, don't ask. So then she went back to the house, and having helped herself and Toto to a good drink of the cool, clear water, she set about making ready for the journey to the City of Emeralds. Dorothy had only one other dress, but that happened to be clean and was hanging on a peg beside her bed. Let's just take a look at the word peg for a minute. Maybe I'll type wall peg. A peg is like a long, round object. So, for example, if you take a look at this, this is a peg. So you can imagine a peg in the wall, and then you can put your clothes there. Okay. Dorothy had only one other dress, but that happened to be clean and was hanging on a peg beside her bed. It was gingham with checks of white and blue. Okay, I have no idea what gingham means. I guess maybe that's a design. So let's take a look. No, it's just like the what you imagine from the movie, if you've seen the movie The Wizard of Oz. So this pattern, I guess, is called gingham. I never knew that. I think I would call that checkered. I would call that checkered. But I guess the right word is gingham. It was gingham with checks of white and blue, and although the blue was somewhat faded with many washings, it was still pretty. It was still a pretty frock. A frock usually means a dress. The girl washed herself carefully, dressed herself in the clean gingham, and tied her pink sunbonnet to her head. She took a little basket and filled it with bread from the cupboard, laying a white cloth over the top. And then she looked down at her feet and noticed how old and worn her shoes were. "They surely will never do for a long journey, Toto," she said, and Toto looked up into her face with his little black eyes and wagged his tail. You know, when dogs move their tail, that's wagging their tail. So he wagged his tail to show that he knew what she meant. At that moment, Dorothy saw, lying on the table, silver shoes that had belonged to the Witch of the East. "I wonder if they will fit me," she said to Toto. "They would be just the thing to take on a long walk in, for they could not wear out." You know, wear out is a phrasal verb which means become tired, but also it means like you use something very much and then it becomes in bad condition. So let's take a look at some worn out things for a moment. Now look at these shoes. These shoes have been worn many, many times. You wear the shoes many, many times. You wear them every day, and they become tired. They become no good. And the way you describe this is worn out shoes. These are worn out shoes. You wear them so much, it becomes tired. Look at this backpack. Somebody has used it every day for a very long time, so you call this a worn out backpack. It's funny how you see a lot of pictures of shoes. If you use your tires, sometimes you have to change the tires of your car because they will wear out. You can see my dog here. I have a new angle. I didn't realize you could see the dog from here. I said, "What's that little thing moving in the corner?" Okay, so this is actually a very handy word because you see it coming up all the time with different things. Worn out. You use it so much it becomes no good. Also, you can use it to mean I'm very, very tired. If you have a long day and you become very tired, you can say, "I'm worn out. Leave me alone. I'm worn out." "I wonder if they'll fit me," she said to Toto. "They would be just the thing to take on to take a long walk in, for they could not wear out." So these silver slippers, she could wear them forever, and they will never become tired. They will never look like those shoes in the picture. They will never wear out, like her shoes. Her shoes are worn out. She took off her old leather shoes and tried on the silver ones, which fitted her as well as they had been made for her. Finally, she picked up her basket, "Come along, Toto," she said. "We'll go to the Emerald City and ask the Great Oz how to get back to Kansas again." She closed the door, locked it, and put the key carefully in the pocket of her dress. And so, with Toto trotting along her soberly, trotting is like fancy walking. So it's not just walking, it's almost like dancing and walking at the same time. Dogs do that if they're very happy. And so, with Toto trotting along soberly behind her, sober means serious. So he's not happy, he's serious. He's soberly trotting along. She started on her journey. There were several roads nearby, but it did not take long. It did not take her long to find the one paved with yellow brick. Pavement is what covers a road. Let's take a look at that for a minute. How about this picture here? Let's see if you can see this. See, a paved road has a surface. It's much easier to walk down a paved road because there's some sort of surface. And actually, the black one here is the most ideal paved road. But this is also okay. This is out in the country. But if you're going down an unpaved road, that's more complicated. That's not so comfortable or not so easy. So Dorothy found the road paved in yellow bricks. So you see this one is paved in black. I think that's called tar. I would call that tar. And this one is paved with rock. But her road is paved with yellow bricks. There were several roads nearby, but it did not take her long to find the one paved with yellow brick. Within a short time, she was walking briskly. That means with a lot of energy. She was walking briskly toward the Emerald City, her silver shoes tinkling merrily on the hard yellow roadbed. The sun shone bright and the birds sang sweet, and Dorothy did not feel nearly as bad as you might think a little girl who had been suddenly whisked away. If somebody is whisked away, they're taken very quickly. So she was happier than you might think, considering she's a young girl who was taken very quickly, who was whisked away from her own country and set down in the midst of a strange land. By the way, let me show you what a whisk is. See, this is a whisk, the tool. So imagine somebody does this and then Dorothy flies out and now she's in a new land. She's taken away very quickly. She's whisked away to the land of Oz. The sun shone bright, and the birds sang sweet, and Dorothy did not feel nearly as bad as you might think a little girl who had suddenly been whisked away from her own country and set down in the midst of a strange land. She was surprised as she walked along to see how pretty the country was about her. There were neat fences at the sides of the road, painted a dainty blue color. Dainty means delicate, soft. A soft blue color, a delicate blue color, a dainty blue color. And beyond them were fields of grain and vegetables in abundance. Evidently, the Munchkins were good farmers. and able to raise large crops. Once in a while, she would pass a house, and the people came out to look at her and bow low as she went by, for everyone knew she had been the means of destroying the wicked witch and setting them free from bondage. The houses of the Munchkins were odd-looking dwellings. Odd means strange. The houses of the Munchkins were strange-looking. And dwelling, the verb to dwell means to live in a place. Not to live like my heart is beating, I'm breathing, I'm living, but to live meaning to live in a place. So another word for house is dwelling. So I dwell in the country. That means I live in the country. People don't usually use that word dwell as a verb, unless under special circumstances. But it is normal to say dwelling, because if you say house, that's different from an apartment, or some people live in a house, some people live in an apartment, some people live in a cardboard box. They're all dwellings. So it's easier to describe a place where people live as a dwelling than to name it specifically. So they were odd-looking dwellings, strange-looking houses. For each was round with a big dome for a roof. All were painted blue, for in this country of the East, blue was the favorite color. Towards the evening, when Dorothy was tired with her long walk and began to wonder where she would pass the night, she came to a house rather larger than the rest. And on the green lawn before it, many men and women were dancing. 5 little fiddlers played. A fiddle is a violin, so 5 little fiddlers, 5 people playing the violin. 5 little fiddlers played as loudly as possible, and the people were laughing and singing, while a big table nearby was loaded with delicious fruits and nuts and pies and cakes and many other good things to eat. The people greeted Dorothy kindly and invited her to supper and to pass the night with them, for this was the home of one of the richest Munchkins in the land. And his friends were gathered with him to celebrate their freedom from the bondage of the wicked witch. Dorothy ate a hearty supper. That means big, strong, a lot of food. Dorothy ate a lot of food. She ate a hearty supper and was waited upon by the rich Munchkin himself, whose name was Baum. And then she sat down upon a settle and watched the people dance. When Baum saw the silver shoes, he said, "You must be a great sorceress." Sorceress, that's like a witch. But witch sounds evil, and sorceress, I guess it doesn't sound so bad. "You must be a great sorceress." "Why?" asked the girl. "Because you wear the silver shoes and have killed the wicked witch." Eunice, is that how you say it? Eunice says hi. Hi, Eunice. Thank you for joining us today. We're just reading chapters 3 and 4 of The Wizard of Oz. So if you have any questions about the vocabulary or expressions as we go, please ask in the comments, and I'll be happy to talk about those words or phrases with you. "Because you wear the silver shoes and have killed the wicked witch. Besides, you have white in your frock, and only witches and sorceresses wear white." Oh wait, let's look at the picture. I'm just running through. So let's see, you see Dorothy, and you see the Bok, the rich Munchkin, next to her, saying, "You must be a very powerful sorceress." And you can see the food, and some Munchkins, and one fiddler. So we have one fiddler playing down here in the corner. Fiddle, violin, it's kind of the same thing. My dress is blue and white, checked, said Dorothy, smoothing the wrinkles in it. It's kind of you to wear that, said Bock. Blue is the color of the Munchkins, and white is the witch color. So we know you're a very friendly witch. Dorothy didn't know what to say to this, for all the people seemed to think her a witch. And she knew very well she was only an ordinary little girl who had come by chance of a cyclone into this strange land. When she had tired of watching the dancing, to tire of something means you become bored. Oh, this is so boring. I'm finished. I don't want to see it anymore. It's boring. When she had tired of watching the dancing, Boak led her into the house, where he gave her a room with a pretty bed in it. Sheets were made of blue cloth, and Dorothy slept soundly in them till the morning. Now that's an expression. To sleep soundly means that nothing disturbs your sleep. You have no problem sleeping. It's a very nice, comfortable sleep. How did you sleep? Soundly. That means very nicely, no problems, no interruptions, very comfortable sleep. Dorothy slept soundly in them till morning, with Toto curled up on the blue rug beside her. She ate a hearty breakfast. Hearty is like big, strong breakfast. She ate a big breakfast, a strong breakfast. She ate a hearty breakfast, and watched a wee Munchkin baby. Wee is kind of a fun word for little. So you can use that word wee. It means very, very small, and it's kind of a cute word. So it's nice to describe a baby as wee, a wee baby. That means a little baby. And watched a wee Munchkin baby who played with Toto and pulled his tail and crowed and laughed in a way that greatly amused Dorothy. Toto was a fine curiosity to all the people, for they had never seen a dog before. Well, how far is it to the Emerald City? The girl asked. I don't know, answered Boak gravely. Gravely means in a very serious way. I've never been there. It's better for people to keep away from Oz, unless they have business with him. But it is a long way to the Emerald City, and it will take you many days. Country here is rich and pleasant, but you must pass through rough and dangerous places before you reach the end of your journey. Well, this worried Dorothy a little, but she knew that only the great Oz could help her get to Kansas again. So she bravely resolved not to turn back. To resolve means to make a decision. So when you resolve to do something, you have decided to do something. So she decided not to turn back, not to return to the Munchkins. She decided to continue to Oz. She resolved to continue. She bade her friends goodbye, and again started along the road of yellow brick. When she had gone several miles, that's like 14 kilometers. When she had gone several miles, she thought she would stop to rest, and so climbed the top of a fence beside the road and sat down. There was a great cornfield beyond the fence, and not far away she saw a scarecrow placed high on a pole to keep the birds from the ripe corn. Dorothy leaned her chin upon her hand and gazed thoughtfully at the scarecrow. Its head was a small sack stuffed with straw. Stuffed is when you fill something with something else. So what happens if we look at the word stuffed for a minute. Look at pictures of stuffed. Okay, I don't know which country you're in, but this sometimes is popular. I've seen this in many countries. Stuffed peppers. So, you know, the inside of the pepper, there's nothing there. And people put meat and cheese and nuts and fruit and all kinds of things, and then they cook it. That's a stuffed pepper. Stuffing is when you put something inside of something else. It's a very useful word. That's funny because I just put the word stuffed and all they show are stuffed peppers. But there are other things, like, for example, a stuffed turkey. Let's take a look at a stuffed turkey for a minute. See? You take things like bread and wine and mushrooms and nuts and you put it inside the turkey and then you cook it. And then it's very delicious. That's my favorite thing about turkey, is the stuffing inside of it. Here you can see a stuffed animal. See, this is a stuffed animal because they take something soft and they put it inside, and then you can hug it because it's nice and soft. That's a stuffed animal. If you eat a lot of food, and then finally you can't eat any more food, you can say, "Oh, I'm stuffed." That's very common. That means I can't eat anymore. I'm full, completely full. I'm stuffed. That's a very common phrase for talking about eating too much food. But here we're talking about a scarecrow. The scarecrow is stuffed with, what word do they use here? Stuffed with straw. Straw is, this is straw. Maybe if you don't know what a scarecrow is, you don't know what straw is, but this is, not that. Those are straws too, but this is straw. It's like dry grass. So its head was a small sack. A sack is a bag, stuffed with straw, with eyes, nose, and mouth painted on to represent a face. An old pointed blue hat that had belonged to some munchkin was perched on his head, and the rest of the figure was a blue suit of clothes, worn and faded, which had also been stuffed with straw. On the feet were some old boots with blue tops, such as every man wore in this country, and the figure was raised above the stalks of corn by means of the pole stuck up its back. While Dorothy was looking earnestly means with looking earnestly, that means like with a lot of attention. Looking earnestly into the queer painted face, queer means strange, of the scarecrow. She was surprised. Wait, here's a picture. So here's our scarecrow stuffed with straw and Dorothy. There's something strange about that. And Toto, there's Toto looking also at the scarecrow. One of the eyes slowly wink at her. Winking is this. That's winking. So Dorothy's looking at the scarecrow and one of the eyes went like that. It winked at her. She thought she must have been mistaken at first, for none of the scarecrows in Kansas ever wink. But presently the figure nodded its head. This is nodding your head. Presently the figure nodded its head to her in a friendly way. And then she climbed down from the fence and walked up to it, while Toto ran around the pole and barked. "Good day," said the scarecrow in a rather husky voice. Husky means deep. Good day. So he has a very deep voice. Good day. "Did you speak?" asked the girl in wonder. "Certainly," answered the scarecrow. "How do you do?" "Eh, pretty well, thank you," replied Dorothy politely. "How do you do?" "Ah, I'm not feeling well," said the Scarecrow, with a smile. "For it's very tedious being perched up here night and day." Tedious means like boring. It's very tedious, it's very boring being perched up here night and day to scare away crows. "Oh, can't you get down?" asked Dorothy. "No, for this pole. This pole is stuck up my back." "If you would please take away the pole, I shall be greatly obliged to you." Dorothy reached out both arms and lifted the figure off the pole. For being stuffed with straw, it was quite light. "Oh, thank you very much," said the Scarecrow, when he had been set down on the ground. "I feel like a new man." Dorothy was puzzled at this. Puzzled means very confused. Dorothy was puzzled, very confused at this. For it sounded queer. Queer means strange. It sounded queer to her. A stuffed man speak. It sounded queer to hear a stuffed man speak, and to see him bow and walk along beside her. "Who are you?" asked the Scarecrow when he had stretched, yawned. When he had stretched and yawned. "And where are you going?" "My name is Dorothy," said the girl, "and I'm going to the Emerald City to ask the Great Oz to send me back to Kansas." "Where is the Emerald City?" he inquired. "And who is Oz?" "Why, don't you know?" She returned in surprise. "No, indeed, I don't know anything. You see, I'm stuffed, so I have no brains at all," he answered sadly. "Oh," said Dorothy, "I'm awfully sorry for you." "Do you think," he asked, "if I go to the Emerald City with you, that the Great Oz would give me brains?" I cannot tell," she returned. "But you may come with me if you like. If Oz will not give you any brains, you'll be no worse off than you are now." "That's true," said the Scarecrow. "You see," he continued confidentially, "I don't mind my legs and arms and body being stuffed, because I can't get hurt. If anyone treading means walking, stepping. If anyone treads on my toes, if anyone walks on my toes, or sticks a pin into me, it doesn't matter, for I can't feel it. But I don't want people to call me a fool. A fool is a stupid person, an idiot. And if my head stays stuffed with straw instead of with brains, as yours is, how am I ever to know anything?" "Oh, I understand how you feel," said the little girl, who was truly sorry for him. "If you will come with me, I'll ask Oz to do all he can for you." "Oh, thank you," he answered gratefully. And they walked back to the road. Dorothy helped him over the fence, and they started along the path of yellow brick for the Emerald City. Toto did not like this addition to the party at first. He smelled around the stuffed man as if he suspected there might be a nest of rats in the straw. He often growled in an unfriendly way to the Scarecrow. "Don't mind Toto," replied the Scarecrow. "Don't mind Toto," said Dorothy to her new friend. "He never bites." "Oh, I'm not afraid," replied the Scarecrow. "He can't hurt the straw. Do let me carry the basket for you. I shall not mind it, for I can't get tired. I'll tell you a secret," he continued as he walked along. There's only one thing in the world I'm afraid of. What's that? Asked Dorothy. The Munchkin farmer who made you? No, answered the Scarecrow. It's a lighted match. Okay, I don't know how common matches are anymore in this world. But let me show you a picture of a match so you can understand what he's talking about. These are matches. So do you recognize these? This is what you use to make a fire. So this is a lighted match. So that's the one thing he's afraid of in the world. A lighted match. All right. Well, that was the end of chapter 3, so let's read chapter 4. These are pretty short chapters. The Road Through the Forest, chapter 4. After a few hours, the road began to be rough, and the walking grew so difficult that the Scarecrow often stumbled over the yellow brick. Stumbling, let's see if we can find a picture of stumbling. Just a second here. Let's see. Okay, well, that's not good. Well, let's see if we can find a better one. Okay, this was pretty good. Here's a picture of stumbling. So imagine when you're walking and then you have a little accident. You don't fall, but you just have a little interruption in your walk. Then you continue. That's stumbling. So the Scarecrow was stumbling on the yellow bricks. He doesn't walk very well or very easily. The Scarecrow often stumbled over the yellow brick. Eunice says they're very common in my country. Oh, matches? Are you talking about matches? Which country are you in? I just, for some reason, I think nobody uses matches anymore. I think that's one of those things that if you talk about them, it seems like you're old. Sometimes, indeed, they were broken or missing altogether. Wait a minute. Oh, because the bricks were missing. The road is not a very good road. As they said, it was a rough road. Sometimes, indeed, they were broken or missing altogether, leaving holes that Toto jumped across and Dorothy walked around. As for the Scarecrow, having no brains, he walked straight ahead, and so stepped into the holes and fell at full length on the hard bricks. Oh, so he actually did fall. So he was walking and then he would stumble and then get up and continue walking. It never hurt him, however, and Dorothy would pick him up and set him upon his feet again, while he joined her in laughing merrily at his own mishap. A mishap, that's like a mistake or a stupid thing that you do, something unintended that isn't very good. The farms were not nearly so well cared for here as they were further back. There were fewer houses and fewer fruit trees, and the farther they went, the more dismal. Dismal means depressing, sad, not happy. It's the opposite of cheerful. So the farther they went, the more. So as they walked down the road, everything looked sadder. Everything looked more depressing. Everything looked darker and dirtier, dismal. And lonesome the country became. At noon, they sat down by the roadside near a little brook. A brook is like a little stream. It's like, we better take a look at that, a picture of that. It's like a baby river. Is probably the best way to think of a brook, is a baby river, a little river. These are brooks. So not really a river, not big enough to be a river. At noon, they sat down by the roadside near a little brook. And Dorothy opened her basket and got out some bread. She offered a piece to the Scarecrow, but he refused. "I'm never hungry," he said, "and it's a lucky thing I'm not, for my mouth is only painted, and if I should cut a hole in it so that I could eat, the straw I'm stuffed with would come out, and that would spoil the shape of my head." Spoil means ruin. That would destroy the shape of my head. Dorothy saw at once that this was true, so she only nodded. This is nodding. She agreed with him and went on eating her bread. "Tell me something about yourself and the country you came from," said the Scarecrow when she had finished her dinner. She told him all about Kansas and how gray everything was there, and how the cyclone had carried her into this queer land of Oz. Remember, queer means strange. The Scarecrow listened carefully and said, "I cannot understand why you should wish to leave this beautiful country and go back to the dry, gray place you call Kansas." "That's because you have no brains," answered the girl. "No matter how dreary means sad, again it's like dismal, sad, dark, depressing. No matter how dreary and gray our homes are, we people of flesh and blood would rather live there." We have to look at the picture here. So here's the Scarecrow and Dorothy and Toto sitting beside the brook, sitting next to the brook and having dinner. "Than any other country, be it ever so beautiful, there's no place like home." The Scarecrow sighed. Sighing is this. "Oh." The Scarecrow sighed. "Of course, I cannot understand it," he said. "If your heads were stuffed with straw, like mine, you probably would all live in beautiful places, and then Kansas would have no people at all. It's fortunate for Kansas that you have no brains." "Won't you tell me a story while we're resting?" asked the child. The Scarecrow looked at her reproachfully. Reproachfully is like reproachfully is like, "What? Me tell a story? What, are you stupid?" So the Scarecrow went, "What?" and answered, "My life has been so short. I really know nothing whatever. I was only made the day before yesterday. What happened in the world before that time is all unknown to me. Luckily, when the farmer made my head, one of the first things he did was paint my ears so that I heard what was going on. There was another Munchkin with him, and the first thing I heard the farmer saying, 'How do you like those ears?' 'They aren't straight,' answered the other. 'Never mind,' said the farmer. 'Their ears just the same,' which was true enough. 'Now I'll make the eyes,' said the farmer. So he painted my right eye, and as soon as it was finished I found myself looking at him, and everything around me with a great deal of curiosity. For this was my first glimpse of the world.'" The word glimpse means like look. This was my first vision, my first look of the world, my first glimpse of the world. "Oh, that's a rather pretty eye," remarked the Munchkin, who was watching the farmer. "Blue paint is just the color for eyes." "I think I'll make the other a little bigger," said the farmer. And then when the second eye was done, I could see much better than before. Then he made my nose and my mouth. But I did not speak, because at that time I didn't know what a mouth was for. I had fun. I had the fun of watching them make my body and my arms and my legs. And when they fastened my head, fastening means like attaching. So when they attached the head, when they fastened the head, you know, the time that you would see that word, let me show you a picture, is when you're talking about this. See, the seatbelt? This is a seatbelt in a car. So if you go on an airplane or in a car, you'll see that word fasten. Connect, attach, fasten, seatbelt. That's what fasten means. So here the munchkin is attaching the head to the body. He's fastening the head to the body. I had the fun of watching them make my body and my arms and legs, and when they fastened my head at last, I felt very proud, for I thought I was just as good a man as anyone. "This fellow will scare the crows fast enough," said the farmer. "He looks just like a man." "Why, he is a man," said the other, and I quite agreed with him. The farmer carried me under his arm to the cornfield and set me up on a tall stick where you found me. He and his friend soon after walked away and left me alone. Oh, I did not like to be deserted that way. To be deserted means to be abandoned or to be left alone. So the scarecrow did not like it when they left him. They put him in the field and then they walked away, and he felt very alone. He felt deserted. That's what deserted means. It means feeling alone. I felt very deserted. I did not like to be deserted this way. So I tried to walk after them, but my feet would not touch the ground, and I was forced to stay on that pole. It was a lonely life to lead, for I had nothing to think of, having been made such a little while before. Many crows and other birds flew into the cornfield, but as soon as they saw me, they flew away again, thinking I was a munchkin. This pleased me and made me feel I was quite an important person. By and by, an old crow flew near me, and after looking at me carefully, he perched. That's what birds do. Birds, when they sit with their legs attached like this is perching. He perched on my shoulder and said, "I wonder if that farmer thought to fool me with this clumsy manner. Any crow of sense could see that you're only stuffed with straw." And then he hopped down at my feet and ate all the corn he wanted. The other birds, seeing that he was not harmed by me, came to eat the corn too. So in short time, there was a great flock of them about me. A flock of birds is what you call a group of birds. I felt sad at this, for it showed I was not such a good scarecrow after all. But the old crow comforted me, saying, "If you only had brains in your head, you would be as good as a man as any of them, and a better man than some of them. Brains are the only things worth having in this world, no matter whether one is a crow or a man." After the crows had gone, I thought this over. To think something over means you consider it very carefully. That's a very common phrasal verb. So when the crows left, I considered what he said very carefully. I thought it over. Thought it over. Thought it over. I thought it over. And decided I would try hard to get some brains. Good luck, you came along and pulled me off the stake. And from that, And from what you say, I'm sure the great Oz will give me brains as soon as we get to the Emerald City. Oh, I hope so, said Dorothy. You seem anxious to have them. Oh, yes, I'm anxious. Anxious is like nervous, excited, something like that, returned the Scarecrow. It's such an uncomfortable feeling to know that one is a fool. Well, said the girl, let's go. And she handed the basket to the Scarecrow. There were no fences at all by the side of the road now, and the land was rough and untilled. Towards the evening, they came to a great forest where the trees grew so big and close together that their branches met over the road of yellow brick. It was almost dark under the trees, for the branches shut out the daylight, but the travelers did not stop and went into the forest. If this road goes in, it must come out, said the Scarecrow. And as the Emerald City is at the other end of the road, we must go wherever it leads us. Anyone would know that, said Dorothy. Certainly. That's why I know it, returned the Scarecrow. If it required brains to figure it out. To figure something out means to find the answer to something. If it required brains to find the answer, if it required brains to figure it out, I never should have said it. After an hour or so, the light faded away, and they found themselves stumbling into the darkness. Dorothy could not see at all, but Toto could. For some dogs see very well in the dark, and the Scarecrow declared that he could see as well as by day. So they took hold of his arm and managed to get along fairly well. If you see any house, or any place where we can pass the night, she said, you must tell me, for it's very uncomfortable walking in the dark. Soon after, the Scarecrow stopped. I see a little cottage at the right of us, he said, built of logs and branches. Shall we go there? Yes, indeed, answered the child. I'm all tired out. So the Scarecrow led her through the trees until they reached the cottage. Dorothy entered and found a bed of dried leaves in one corner. She lay down at once, and with Toto beside her soon fell into a sound sleep. The Scarecrow, who was never tired, stood up in another corner and waited patiently until morning came. So here's a picture of the house. Oh, and that was the end of chapter 4. Okay. Well, thank you for watching chapter 3 and chapter 4 of Wizard of Oz. Next time we will read chapter 5 and chapter 6. They're pretty short. They're pretty short chapters, so they go by quickly. All right, well, thank you for watching, and thank you for your questions and comments, and I hope that you return when we read chapter 5 and chapter 6 of The Wizard of Oz. And chapter 5 is titled The Rescue of the Tin Woodman. See, there's a Tin Man. All right, thank you. Goodbye.